I survived war zones, but I never expected the ambush waiting for me in my own home. My name's Jackson T. Walker, 60 years old, 40 years in the U.S. Army, infantry, senior non-commissioned officer, retired sergeant major. I've been through 4 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, saw the worst of Somalia. I've eaten dirt, watched brothers bleed out, been hit by IEDs, and patched holes in 20-somethings who scream for their mothers with their last breath. I thought I'd seen everything, but nothing prepares you for betrayal at home. Not when it's quiet, not when it comes from the person who told you she'd wait forever. I retired in May, a quiet ceremony at Fort Bragg. Nothing flashy, just the way I wanted it. A folded flag, a few handshakes, and the silence that comes when you walk away from the only life you've known since you were 20. My plan was simple. Come home, settle into civilian life, maybe teach leadership courses or write a book about field strategy. More importantly, spend time with my wife, Karen. Karen, she's 40. We married when she was just 21 and I was 41. Everyone raised eyebrows at the age gap, but love has no manual. She was vibrant, curious, full of energy, and she breathed life into my worn-out bones when I didn't even realize how tired I was. For nearly 2 decades, she stood by me while I deployed, sent care packages, waited through months of silence, never complained, not once, not seriously. Or so I thought. We had no children together. That was always a sensitive topic. I had a daughter from a previous marriage, grown now living in Colorado. Karen always said she wasn't sure she wanted kids, or maybe didn't want to raise them without me home. I accepted that. Instead, we built a quiet little world. We bought a modest house in Virginia, brick ranch style, big yard, porch swing. I sent money home. She ran a small online business, vintage decor, custom furniture. She was good at it. She seemed happy. Or maybe I only saw what I wanted to see. Coming home this time felt different. For the first few weeks, everything was perfect on the surface. Karen hugged me tighter than usual when I arrived. We had champagne. She cooked my favorite meal, meatloaf and sweet corn. We made love that night, and I remember thinking, maybe this is what peace finally feels like. She had taken in 2 twin toddlers, said they were her niece's kids, staying with her temporarily while the mother figured her life out. I thought it was sweet. Karen had always had a soft spot for kids, even if she said she didn't want her own. The twins were adorable, maybe 2 years old. Blonde curls, deep blue eyes, full of laughter and mischief. I played with them in the yard, built them a sandbox, took them for ice cream. It felt good, like a glimpse of the father I never fully got to be. But little things didn't add up. Karen was quieter than I remembered. She seemed distracted, even distant sometimes. She brushed it off as just busy with work or tired from chasing toddlers all day. I told myself I was just adjusting to civilian life, that maybe I was reading too much into things. But the cracks had started forming. I just didn't want to admit they were there. There was a moment, small, but now I see it was the first red flag. One evening I heard the little boy call Karen Mommy. She laughed it off and said, "He hears the other kids at daycare say that. He's just confused." I nodded. But the thing was, he said it naturally, not like he was guessing. It rolled off his tongue like a truth he didn't know he was supposed to hide. I didn't press it. I respected her, trusted her. I believed in what we had, in the woman who waited for me through all those tours, who held my hands over hospital beds and wrote letters to me by candlelight during blackouts. But war teaches you something most people never learn: how to read people in their silences. And Karen's silences were growing longer, deeper, and more dangerous. A few weeks passed after my return, and the shine of normal life began to fade. It wasn't dramatic. There were no fights, no yelling. Karen still kissed me goodbye in the morning, still made coffee just the way I liked. Black, with a single cube of ice to cool it down fast. She smiled when we watched movies together. She held my hand in the grocery store. But something about it all felt rehearsed, like she was playing a role, and not very convincingly. I started to notice little inconsistencies. For one, she began locking her phone. That was new. She always left it face up on the kitchen counter before. Now it was glued to her hand, or hidden in her purse. She also became strangely overprotective of the twins. If I picked one up without asking, she'd suddenly appear in the doorway like a hawk. If I offered to take them to the park alone, she had 100 reasons why I shouldn't. And then there were the late-night phone calls. Quiet. Hushed. She'd go out to the patio when she thought I was asleep, whispering under her breath. Once I walked out to get a glass of water and saw her jump as I opened the fridge door. She said it was a supplier. At midnight. Right. I didn't want to become paranoid, but 40 years in the military teaches you to trust your gut. When something feels off, it usually is. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. She'd been alone a long time, raising 2 kids, running a business, handling life without me. Maybe I was the one who needed to adjust. That's what I told myself. Over and over. Then came the picture. I was cleaning out the garage one Saturday, organizing old gear. I found a photo album I hadn't seen in years, dusty and sun-warped. Inside were pictures of our trips, our home, her old friends. And then I saw a photo I didn't recognize. It was Karen, pregnant, heavily pregnant, standing in our backyard, wearing one of my old army sweatshirts, smiling, alone. There was no date on the back, no caption, but she looked about 7 months along, and the photo had to be less than 2 years old. I could tell by the shrubs, the patio bricks, the furniture, all recently replaced. My throat went dry. I sat on the concrete floor, staring at that picture, my hands shaking. Why hadn't she told me? We talked about everything. Or I thought we did. And why lie about the twins? Were they really her niece's children? I confronted her that evening. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just held up the photo and said, "When was this taken?" She stared at it for a second too long. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she blinked and gave me a half smile. "Oh, that's not me pregnant. I just had a bloated stomach that day. We were joking about it, remember?" Choking. I didn't remember any joke. I stared at her for a long moment and said nothing. She went back to folding laundry like the conversation hadn't even happened. And that was the moment I knew. I started paying closer attention. I checked the kids' medical paperwork. She always kept their stuff in a drawer by the desk. Their birth certificates were there, and listed under father, unknown. That hit like a bullet. Why would her niece, supposedly the mother, leave father unknown for both kids? Unless the story about the niece wasn't true. Unless Karen wasn't babysitting someone else's children. Unless they were hers. The next day, I took a toothbrush from each of the twins, sealed them in plastic bags, and made a quiet trip to a private DNA testing clinic in Richmond. I didn't want to believe it, but I had to know, had to see it in black and white, had to kill the hope before it killed me. A week later, the results arrived in an envelope. 2 simple lines. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. That was it. No elaboration, no emotion. Just numbers and finality. I wasn't their father, not even close. And if I wasn't, and there was no niece, then the only conclusion left was the one I didn't want to face. Karen had children with someone else, while I was overseas, while I was serving, while I was trusting her with my heart, my home, and everything I thought we'd built. I sat in the car with the envelope on my lap, staring out at nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, silently drowning in the realization that the woman I had given everything to had given herself to someone else and had been raising his children under my roof. That night, the silence between us was deafening. Karen was in the kitchen wiping down counters that were already spotless. I walked in slowly, holding the envelope. I didn't sit. I didn't speak right away. I placed the envelope on the counter beside her gently, as if it were a grenade with the pin half pulled. She looked at it, confused. Then up at me. "What's that?" I didn't blink. "Open it." She hesitated, hands frozen, the cloth still in her fingers. "Jackson, what is this?" "Open it." Her eyes scanned the label. She didn't touch it, just stood still as her lips pressed into a tight, pale line. "You did a test on the kids?" No panic, no shock, Just a flat statement. She already knew. And just like that, everything I was holding inside began to crack. They're not your nieces, are they? No, they're yours. Yes. Who's the father? It doesn't matter? That answer. That goddamn answer. I lost it. Not violently, but the pressure exploded. My voice thundered through the walls of our home. The house I built, maintained, protected. Does it matter? You let me believe they were someone else's kids. You lied to me. You fed me stories like I was some senile old man, while you let another man's children call me grandpa. She flinched at that word, but she didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't want to lose you, Jack. You'd been gone for a year. I was alone. You don't know how hard it was. So you slept with someone else? That's how you cope? By cheating on your husband while he's deployed? You were never here. You think you know what marriage is? You pop in for 2 weeks between tours and expect me to pretend everything's normal? Her voice was rising now. Defensive. Bitter. You married someone 20 years younger and expected me to just wait forever like some damn war widow. I never asked for pity. I asked for honesty. You could have told me. I would have understood more than you think. No, you wouldn't have. You would have left. You don't get to decide that for me. There was a pause. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her expression. Not anger, not guilt, shame. A brief crack in the armor. It was just one night, she whispered. It wasn't supposed to happen. I shook my head. That's not what just one night gets you. That's not how twins happen. Her eyes welled up, and she finally sat down. The cloth dropped to the floor. She looked defeated, and in that moment, I didn't hate her. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to rewind time, to be back in uniform halfway across the world, where the enemy wore a uniform, and you knew who was shooting at you. Here in my own kitchen, the war was personal, and I'd already lost. Who is he? I asked again. It doesn't matter. He's not around. He doesn't even know. Are you protecting him? I'm protecting you. Bullshit. She was protecting herself. From consequences. From shame. From watching me walk away. But it was too late. Even if I stayed physically, the soul of what we had, the bond forged through decades of sacrifice, was dead. I packed that night, quietly. She sat on the couch with the twins, her twins, watching cartoons like it was any other evening. She didn't stop me. She didn't beg. She just watched me with hollow eyes like she knew this moment had been coming all along. I left a short note on the table. 5 words. You buried us 2 years ago. And I walked out of the house I paid for, fought for, and believed in, without looking back. I didn't go far. A small motel on the edge of town, not the kind people write reviews about. Paint peeling off the walls, the air conditioner growling like a wounded animal, and a bedspread that smelled like every mistake ever made in that room. But it was quiet, and after what I just walked out of, quiet was all I wanted. I didn't call anyone. Not my daughter in Colorado. Not the 2 guys I still kept in touch with from my last unit. Not even the chaplain I used to sit with during long deployments, because I didn't know what to say. How do you explain that the woman you built a life with, the one who was supposed to be your peace after war, had betrayed you in the one way that felt like an execution? I wasn't ready for the pity, or the judgment, or the endless, painful advice. So I sat in that motel room for 3 nights, staring at the ceiling, replaying the sound of her voice when she said, "It was just one night. Just one night." I wanted to be angry, but mostly I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped out the insides of my chest and left a note behind that said, "Sorry, it had to be this way." I thought about going back, not to forgive her, but just to pretend, to exist in that familiar space, to hold on to some version of a past that no longer existed, but I couldn't do it. On the 4th day, I drove to the VFW post, just to sit, drink a cheap beer, be around other men who understood silence the way I did. There was an older guy there, James, Vietnam vet, one leg, sharp tongue. He looked at me and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." Something like that. "She leave you?" I didn't answer. He just nodded, took a sip of his beer, and muttered, "Happens to the best of us, and the worst, and everyone in between." Then he went back to watching a rerun of MASH on the tiny TV in the corner. That was it. No advice, no sermon, just recognition, like he saw the crater in my chest and understood exactly what had landed there. In the days that followed, I tried to rebuild a routine. Mornings at the diner, afternoons walking trails, nights writing in a notebook I kept from my last tour, pages now filled not with battle plans but broken memories. Karen didn't call, didn't text, didn't come looking, and that silence hurt more than any of the lies. I checked her social media once, just once. She had deleted every photo of me, every trace of our life together, except one, a post from 2 years ago. A quote image, "Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that save you." No comments, no likes, but I stared at it for a long time. Was I the hard choice, or was she? Eventually, I moved into a rental outside of Charlottesville. Got a dog, a rescue mutt with one ear chewed off and eyes that had seen too much, like me. I named him Sergeant. He never asked questions, never judged, just lay at my feet every night, snoring like a tank. Some nights I thought about the twins. Were they being told the truth? Would they ever know who I was or who I almost became to them? Part of me missed them. Another part hated that they existed. And then there was a darker corner of my mind, the one trained for survival, that whispered, "Be glad they're not yours. You don't have to carry their pain too." A full year passed, not quickly, not quietly. Grief isn't a wave that hits you once and recedes. It's a tide that drags you out over and over, just when you think you've reached the shore. That year was made of small routines and tiny triumphs. I quit alcohol cold turkey after 2 months in the motel. I started walking more, letting the silence of the woods replace the noise in my head. I volunteered once a week at a veteran center, just folding towels and listening to younger men talk about their demons. I never shared mine, not directly. Every once in a while I'd get close. I'd open my mouth thinking I might say something like, "My wife cheated on me while I was deployed and had another man's kids under my roof for 2 years without telling me." But it always stayed in my throat, like a landmine I didn't dare step on. The days became easier, not good, just manageable. I slept, ate, talked to Sergeant like he was an old friend. I still thought about her sometimes. Not with anger, not even with sadness anymore. Just with a strange, tired sense of confusion. Like I dreamed her, like we never really existed. Until one morning in early spring, I saw her again. It happened by accident. I had taken Sergeant into town to get his nails clipped and was walking him down the sidewalk near the square. I stopped at a small cafe to grab a black coffee. And that's when I saw her. Karen. She was sitting outside across the street with a stroller next to her. One of the twins, I could tell. The same eyes, the same tilt of the head. She was on the phone, laughing at something. And for a second I couldn't breathe. She looked different, lighter, happier. Or maybe that's just how she always looked when I wasn't around. I stood there too long, long enough for her to turn her head and notice me. Our eyes met, and for the first time since the night I walked out, we were face to face. She said something quickly into her phone, then stood and crossed the street. Her pace was careful, guarded. She didn't smile. When she stopped in front of me, she opened her mouth, but nothing came out for a moment. Then, "Jack, I didn't expect to see you." I nodded once. "Didn't expect to be seen." Silence. She looked down at Sergeant. "Still have him, huh?" "Yeah, only thing that stayed loyal." She winced, just slightly, but she didn't respond to the jab. We stood like that, two ghosts in daylight. I looked over at the stroller. "He looks like you," I said. "He's got my stubbornness too," she answered softly. "Do they know?" "About what?" "That their mom lied to her husband for 2 years and let someone else raise them as his own." She closed her eyes briefly. "Not yet, but one day, I'll tell them." The truth. I nodded. No rage, no sarcasm. Just a hollow agreement. Then I said something I hadn't rehearsed. "I used to think I hated you. Then I thought I'd forgive you. Now I just don't know who you are." Her voice cracked. "Neither do I." I turned to walk away, but she stopped me. Jack, were you ever happy with me? That question hit harder than all the betrayal, because it was the one I still ask myself at night. Yeah, I said. I was. I just didn't know it was temporary. I walked off after that, didn't look back, and she didn't follow. Later that night, I sat with Sergeant on the porch. The stars were out, sharp and clean in the Virginia sky. He lay at my feet, twitching in a dream. I sipped tea and stared out past the trees, past the shadows. That moment with her stayed in my head, not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. There was no apology, no, I'm sorry, but I realized I didn't need one anymore. She had to live with what she did. I had to live with what I let happen. We both had scars, hers hidden, mine visible, and somewhere in between that maybe was peace. I still carry the photo. The one from the garage, her, pregnant, wearing my old army sweatshirt, not to torture myself, not to remember what she did, but to remind myself what people are capable of when no one's watching. What I learned in war was how to survive. What I learned in marriage was how easily you can be betrayed by the person who swore they'd never leave. But what I know now, at 60, finally retired, finally still, is that even when someone lies, cheats, and walks away, it doesn't mean your story's over. Sometimes it's just the chapter where you learn to stand up again.